The story starts in a small, dark bar where Joe is working as a bartender. She notices Mark Setter, an assistant district attorney, sitting at the counter. Mark secretly gives money to a man and gets something in return. His friend Larry is sitting beside him, drinking. Mark orders a beer and talks to Joe, asking what she will do after work. Joe, who has always found Mark interesting, enjoys the conversation. She smiles, making a joke about how she never has time for anything after work. Mark laughs, and the two share a light-hearted moment. Later, Joe and Mark spend some time together, enjoying each other's company. They talk about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Joe tells him about her bar and how she built it up from nothing. Mark listens, impressed by her determination. But their moment is cut short when Mark's alarm rings. He quickly turns on the TV. The news talks about his big win in the Delete Sano case. This case exposed a corrupt businessman who caused many deaths. The news praises Mark for his hard work and his relentless fight for justice. Joe is proud of him but can tell he is under a lot of pressure. She wants him to stay and relax for a bit longer, but Mark says he has to leave. Before he goes, she warns him about Ernie Dux, a dangerous man she has seen around. Mark tells her not to worry and assures her that everything is under control. Then, he puts on a ring, gives Joe a final look, and leaves. While driving, Mark calls his wife, Sharon. She congratulates him on his success and says she saw him on TV. They exchange a few words, but Mark seems distracted. Suddenly, he realizes another car is following him. He checks his mirrors, trying to get a better look. Before he can react, the car crashes into him, pushing his car off the road. The call cuts off, leaving Sharon confused and scared. She tries calling him back, but there is no answer. Panic starts to rise inside her. The next morning, Sharon's life is shattered. Her friend, Detective Carmen Traxler, comes to her house with terrible news: Mark is dead. Heartbroken, Sharon goes to the hospital to see his body. She refuses to believe that his death was just an accident. Carmen also finds it suspicious and promises to investigate. She tells Sharon to be strong and assures her that she will find the truth. Joe also hears the news and is devastated. But she is even more shocked to learn that Mark was married. He never told her about his wife. Feeling hurt and confused, she stays away from the situation. She wonders if their relationship meant anything to him at all. Anger and sadness mix inside her, but she keeps her feelings to herself. At Mark's funeral, Sharon stands by his casket while friends and colleagues offer their sympathy. She tries to keep herself composed, but it is difficult. From a distance, Joe watches but does not step forward. She feels like she does not belong there, yet she cannot make herself leave either. Larry, Mark's friend, goes to Sharon and tells her he is there for her. He offers his support and tries to comfort her, but Sharon barely hears his words. Her mind is clouded with grief. Later, Larry returns to his apartment, feeling exhausted. As he enters, he senses something is wrong. The air feels heavy. Suddenly, two men, Strand and Sheldon, appear from the shadows. Strand demands to know where the documents Mark got from Dux are. Larry, scared and caught off guard, says he doesn't know. But when Strand threatens Sharon, Larry gives in. He says Dux still has the documents. He begs them not to hurt her, but Strand only smirks before leaving. The next day, Joe decides to go to the funeral, even though she has mixed feelings. Sharon approaches her and starts a conversation. They introduce themselves and share their grief over Mark. Joe admits that she didn't know he was married. Sharon looks at her carefully and nods, saying that Mark kept many secrets. Before Joe leaves, Sharon stops her. She says talking to someone outside her usual life is comforting. She asks Joe to have a drink with her, and Joe invites her to her bar. At the bar, they talk more. Sharon says she never knew Mark came here and wonders why he kept it a secret. She also mentions that she doesn't know the password to Mark's computer, which detectives need. Joe remembers Mark meeting two men the night he died. One was Dux. She didn't recognize the other man, but she saw Dux give something to Mark. She starts thinking this might be linked to his death. Sharon talks about the Delete Sano case. It was one of Mark's biggest cases, and it could have sent powerful people to jail. She thinks his murder might be connected to it. She also recalls something strange: Mark recently started wearing a pink tie, even though he hated that color. It seemed odd, but she never asked him about it. Before Joe can respond, she notices Wendy, Duck's girlfriend, sitting nearby. Joe goes to her and asks about Dux. Wendy hesitates, but Joe offers to pay for her drinks in exchange for information. Wendy finally gives in and tells Joe where Dux is staying. Sharon tries to call Carmen, but she doesn't answer. Frustrated, Sharon leaves a message. Instead of waiting for the police, she and Joe decide to find Dux themselves. Sharon is surprised by Joe's willingness to help but also grateful. She realizes that, despite their different lives, they both cared about Mark in their own way. Following Wendy's directions, they reach an old, creepy house. The place is eerily quiet. The windows are covered with dust, and the air smells stale. They walk carefully through the dark hallways. Every step they take echoes in the empty house. On the second floor, they hear a noise. Holding their breath, they move toward it. When they follow the sound, they find something shocking: Dux is dead. His body is slumped over, lifeless. Both women freeze in fear. What should they do? Should they call the police? Before they can decide, Jo sees movement outside. She rushes to the window and spots a group of men leaving. They look suspicious, their faces hidden under hooded jackets. Without thinking, she follows them. Sharon hesitates, then runs after her. Suddenly, one of the men attacks Jo. Jo reacts fast and kicks him hard. As he stumbles back, Sharon jumps in and kicks him from behind. Just when they think they are safe, Strand appears, ready to fight. His face is calm, but his eyes are full of menace. Jo and Sharon exchange a quick glance. They know they are in trouble. Before Jo can react, she quickly grabs a gun from Sharon and starts shooting. But in all the chaos, she misses, and the man escapes. He disappears into the shadows before anyone can stop him. Sharon and Jo stare at each other, catching their breath, realizing they just lost their only lead. Later, Detective Carmen arrives to check the scene, looking around carefully. She questions Jo, asking her what happened. Jo tells her that she believes Mark's death and Duck's murder are connected. She explains that Ducks gave Mark something very important before he died, something that people might kill for. Carmen listens but remains skeptical, warning Jo not to jump to conclusions. While investigating, Jo recognizes one of the men she saw at Duck's house, giving them a big clue. She points him out in a photograph, making it clear that they are on the right track. Meanwhile, Carmen gives Sharon a secret file about Jo's past. It shows that Jo has been in and out of trouble for fraud, moving from place to place without staying anywhere for too long. Carmen warns Sharon to be careful, but Sharon doesn't let this change her opinion. She tells Carmen to focus on finding Mark's killer instead of digging into Jo's past. Carmen also shares that a powerful man hired someone named Lewis to get rid of problems. Lewis is dangerous and ruthless, known for never leaving loose ends. At the same time, Jo confirms the identity of the man from Duck's house, making their case stronger. Sharon thanks Jo and asks how she learned to fight so well. Jo simply says her ex-boyfriend taught her and moves on, not wanting to talk about it any further. That night, Jo goes home with Sharon, only to find her house completely wrecked. Drawers are open, furniture is broken, and papers are everywhere. It looks like someone was searching for something important. Sharon's hands shake as she takes in the destruction. Jo, angry and frustrated, takes a sip of whiskey and hands the bottle to Sharon. As they sit in the mess, Sharon opens up about her child who only lived for 6 hours. Her voice shakes as she speaks, and Jo listens quietly, realizing Sharon's pain runs deep. Jo hesitates for a moment, she then insists they leave because it's not safe anymore. She helps Sharon pack and takes her to her own home, making sure she has a safe place to stay. While looking around Jo's house, Sharon notices a strange set of tools on a table, including a flashbang, a device that stuns people without hurting them. She wonders why Jo has such things. She also stumbles upon a hidden photo in the bathroom. Shocked, she sees that it's a picture of Jo and Mark together, smiling as if they had been close. Sharon's heart pounds in her chest. Feeling betrayed, she storms out, unable to process what she just saw. Jo follows, but Sharon is already gone, disappearing into the night. Sharon goes to Larry's place and asks if he knew about Mark and Jo. Larry says he didn't but assures Sharon he will always support her. Though still upset, Sharon is comforted by his words and decides to stay at her broken house that night, despite the mess and the danger. The next morning, Jo visits Sharon to explain, but Sharon is too angry to listen. Jo begs her to understand that she never knew Mark was married and only found out after he died. She says their relationship was short, lasting only a few months. But Sharon refuses to forgive her. As Jo leaves, she sees a picture of Larry and realizes he was with Mark on the night he met Ducks. Jo tells Sharon about this discovery. Though still mad, Sharon agrees to keep working with Jo, but only if they report everything to the police. Together, they go to Mark's office and find a video on his computer. It shows the district attorney's wife with a man named Denito. Sensing it is important, Sharon records it on her phone. But before they can do more, the district attorney, Sheldon, suddenly enters. He quickly apologizes and leaves, acting suspicious. Jo and Sharon exchange looks, realizing that something bigger is happening. Later, they find Larry, who reveals something shocking. Mark bought secret files from Ducks containing dangerous information about powerful people at Delatano Industries. Sharon is furious that Larry never told her and walks away, struggling to understand all the lies surrounding Mark's life. While walking alone, Sharon is confronted by Lewis and his partner, Sonny. They try to trap her, cornering her in an alley, but she runs. At one point, they pin her under a car, pressing down hard to stop her from moving. But Jo arrives just in time to save her. She fights off Sonny while Sharon pushes Lewis away. They barely escape in their car, speeding away as bullets fly past them. Sharon watches the video again and notices something shocking. Detective Carmen is in it. Now, they don't know who they can trust. They decide to visit Lisa, who has connections to Sheldon and Delatano. Sharon asks Lisa about her ties to the company, but Lisa says she only knows them through charity events. Meanwhile, Jo secretly searches Lisa's house but is caught and forced to leave before finding anything useful.
Oh, and I was putting them back. I'm so sorry.
What Lisa doesn't know is that her conversation with Sheldon is being recorded. In the recording, Lisa warns Sheldon about Joe and Sharon's visit, confirming their suspicions. Later, Joe and Sharon see Carmen enter Sheldon's house, raising even more questions about her involvement. They take all their evidence to Detective Glenn at the police station, but he refuses to help. He says Carmen is already handling the case. Carmen then confronts them directly, warning them to stop investigating. She tells them Lisa reported Joe's snooping. When Joe and Sharon deny it, Carmen reminds them that their actions could get them into legal trouble. That night, Joe takes Sharon to visit her birth mother at the hospital. As they leave, Sharon suddenly asks if Mark ever really loved Joe. After a pause, Joe admits that he didn't. He was just using her as a distraction. But she confesses that she truly loved him. Later that night, Sharon gets a scary phone call from Lewis. He calmly tells her that he has Larry as a hostage. He gives her an address and warns her not to bring anyone, or Larry will die. She hears Larry begging in the background. When Joe asks where she's going, Sharon lies, saying she just needs to clear her head. Sharon arrives at the location alone and follows Lewis inside. But before anything happens, Larry outsmarts them and manages to kill both Sonny and Lewis. He then hands Sharon a flash drive with proof of Delatano Industries' crimes. Before they can escape, Sheldon arrives, demanding the drive. Larry pulls a gun and forces Sheldon to hand over money in exchange for it. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. Lewis, barely alive, shoots Larry. In the chaos, Joe arrives and causes an explosion as a distraction. The police storm in, and Detective Carmen arrests Sheldon and the Delatano executives. In the end, a news report exposes Delatano Industries' crimes. It reveals how they were poisoning local water. Thanks to the flash drive, justice is served. Sharon and Joe, despite everything that happened, know they made the right choice in fighting for the truth. As the sun rises on a new day, Sharon and Joe sit together, reflecting on everything that happened. Though the battle is over, they know their lives will never be the same. But for the first time in a long time, they both feel a sense of peace, knowing they did the right thing.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.